former Nairobi gubernatorial candidate Peter Kenneth has warned Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition leaders to be very careful with Kenya Kwanza regime, as he claims that Ruto has opted to rule just like the Neo era, where there was no regards to the rule of the law and the constitution of Kenya. Speaking during mass requiem of former Education Cabinet Secretary Dr. George Magoha at Consolata Shrine in Nairobi, the Peter Kenneth added that arresting the former CS with no crime omitted is against the rule of the law. Peter Kenneth maintained that Azimio team is intact and will stand with all its affiliate members against the Kenya Kwanza regime, where he told Ruto to arrest Mashangi at his own risk, since the country will have now peace because the rule of the law is binding to all.
Mourners. We learned from school those days under Dr. Griffin to go by what the director says. So I think the director conspired with another old boy who is a MC, that because in another forum they are all under me, I should say something. So perhaps let me start by acknowledging the entire Starehe fraternity, both boys and girls, alumni, to stand up wherever you are, please. Thank you very much. Thank you. We all know that Professor Magoha had his family and relatives, but we also know that he had many brothers and sisters in the Starehe alumni. I had a personal relationship with him, but I want to say a few things about his relationship with Starehe. I thought one of it the director would have mentioned. He was very close to Dr. Griffin, and in 2005, that evening, one evening when Dr. Griffin passed on, and I called him, and he said he wanted to take charge of looking after the remains of Dr. Griffin. And I think he supervised the entire work of preserving that body in a way that he used to tell us it could stay for 200 years. And that is how close he was to Dr. Griffin. The second one that I remember about Starehe is the day he was sworn in as a cabinet minister. He actually called me and told me to pass a message to the director that now that he was a minister for education, the management team and the director needed to work hard, because from where he sat, he could not be seen to give any favors to Starehe boys. And that was a principle in which we all knew Professor Magoha to be. I recall an event, again a sad event, when he lost his mother, and I went to Marenyo village in Gem for the burial. And when he saw me, he asked me, "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" And I told him, in the Starehe Brotherhood, I cannot tell you I'm coming to bury my mother. I just show up. And although many people think that Professor Magoha never smiled, he actually smiled and laughed. In his days as a VC, especially in the early days as the Vice Chancellor of University of Nairobi, he had difficulties with the Ministry of Education. And the Minister for Education was the late Saitoti. And I'm the one he talked to who brought them together, because he needed funding from the ministry. Perhaps many of his secretaries at the university will recall I used to come there for a cup of tea. Now they know what we were plotting as brothers, to have the Ministry of Education support the University of Nairobi. On the day that Professor passed on, and I've shared this with Barbara and Michael, I was having lunch with a friend of his. And this friend was very busy sending money to Professor Magoha. This was at 2:30 that afternoon. And he wanted to M-Pesa to help in burial arrangement of his younger brother. So he sent the money successfully, and immediately Professor called back to say thank you. So my friend left the lunch table and went out to pick the call and came back and said, I just sent money to Professor. He was just acknowledging because he felt he was rude at a lunch table leaving. So in the evening when the news started coming in and somebody called me, said, Professor Magoha has passed on, I said, no, it's not Professor George. It is his younger brother. Because I did not believe that being privy to a conversation at 3 o'clock, somebody can then leave us 2-3 hours later. But that's what life is all about. That we live in this world at the grace of the grace of the Almighty. And that every minute we have is a borrowed minute. And that we need to do what we can to leave this world better than we found it. Fare thee well, our brother, Professor George Magoha.
Thank you, Peter.